What what is it that gives reality some form of consistency across time? Like why can you wake up in the morning and your room looks the same by all appearances?
Yeah. I generally think and that is a really good question actually. But I think it's generally the connected memories that we have, and those memories can change a lot, right? How I woke up when I was a kid in the room has a completely different memory to me than when I wake up now.
Okay, yeah.
How you perceive the world and how you kind of think about the world, I think changes with those memories itself. As I've experienced more things in my life, more things were put into context. The room when I was a kid, right, was this humongous giant place. It was a
Yeah.
place that I could walk around, and it felt like going from one end of the room to the other felt like a 10-minute walk.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but now, obviously, the experiences I've had and the memories now that I have that continue are much different. And it's not that I forgot those, it's just more context have come to them, I guess.
Okay. So something like reality is held together by your psyche, and your psyche is like the contents of your psyche are dictated by your memory and maybe something like your schema, like how your psyche forms over time, and what kind of boxes you put things in.
Yeah.
And then also like your body, it sounded like too, because if you're bigger, like there's more affordances.
Yeah.
You know, it's sort of a psychological term, but is that something like that?
Yeah, I like that idea of the schema. Because again, it goes back to the trying to compartmentalize things, right? Trying to put things more into perspective and context.
Okay.
So yes, trying to fit all those things in a box that aren't necessarily about boxes that are there, but they help you
Yeah.
quickly get those pieces of information out so you can adjust to what's being seen or what's being shown.
Yeah, so you put things in boxes in order to correspond with what's being seen. Okay, so I really like the idea of reality being held together, at least to some degree, by your psyche and the way you represent things. So what exactly is being represented? Like, what is outside of your psyche? Is there anything outside of your psyche, or is there sort of an unprovable, like, oh man, I'm forgetting the term right now, but there's that idea that like you can only prove that you yourself exists, and you can't prove that anything outside of yourself exists, or something like that. What's outside of your psyche?
That is a good question. I don't know if there is anything outside of what I experience and what I see and what I do. Like, what I'm interacting with, these physical things that are there, right? Like the table or you and I having these conversations. My way of seeing it, my way of understanding it, can be completely different from how you're doing it, right? What you see and what you do are going to be. I guess you and I just, when we have these conversations, when we say, yeah, this is a table, we try to find harmony when in reality we're just trying to make sense of cognitive dissonance between us, right?
Okay, that's an interesting way to put it.
Yeah.
So I really like this, and I promise you I'm not trying to trap you.
No, it's all good.
I just want to ask questions that come to mind.
Totally.
So if in some sense the world exists as a place of entities that are trying to resolve their dissonance with each other,
Yeah.
why is it that we just don't like float through each other? Like, we seem to be embodied in some sense.
Yeah.
Do our bodies, or they have the illusion of existing?
Yeah. No, that's a good question. See, if we try to go with the idea of like, where we're made of molecules, we're made of atoms, we're made of all these different things, right? But there's always that extremely 0.0, almost infinite 1% chance that if you and I ran into each other, our molecules wouldn't run into each other. and we just go through each other, right?
Okay.
So if we're going that route, then there is a tiny percent chance that all this is just barely being held together, but it is. And we almost have to have a coping mechanism, right, to be okay with that, to a point where our brains say, hey, to exist in a world that we have to more or less accept the fact that these molecules are going to do what they're going to do.
Yeah. Okay. So this is interesting because, like, does the molecule itself in that sort of context, like,
Yeah.
what's the ontology of the molecule?
Yeah. See, that's what I don't know, and that's what
Okay.
I don't have. My background is definitely not in science. It's more in the,
Yeah.
the social science part of things.
Okay.
But if we're also thinking about what is a molecule made out of, some of the scientists are thinking about, if we're going really that far, and about the idea of string theory, right?
Yeah, sure.
And then, but you could also go down to that route of what makes up those strings, what makes up that, and how do those all combine into one thing? It's the idea of the what's it called? If we're going kind of more of the philosophical idea of religion, and we're trying to think about God, it was St. Thomas Aquinas, I believe. He came with a theological argument where it's like, what's before that? Well, what's before that? And to a point where it's like, well, logically, if we get to a point, maybe the first before is God. I'm not trying to bring this into a religious context.
Oh, we can.
No, we definitely don't need to. But the idea is that kind of idea. If we're breaking down, what's a molecule? Well, that's broken up into strings. Well, what's a strings? At what point do we stop and say, well, doesn't have to be, but where is the logical place where things have to be?
So is there this sort of bottomless potential?
Yeah.
Where the constituents, like, can always be broken down further?
I think potentially, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Interesting. So would that be have some resemblance to a sort of underlying chaos, like the sort of tohu vabohu, is the kind of Hebrew interpretation?
An underlying chaos of things?
Yeah.
I don't know. See, I think that can be broken down to like two things.
Okay.
One is what we consider chaos could be structured in terms of nature, right? In terms of if there is something outside of our psyche, maybe we consider it chaos because we don't quite understand it, or we don't know how to put it in our schema, put it in those boxes.
Okay.
So we say, well, it's all these different things, and it has to be all over the place. But maybe there is that underlying thing of, no, these things have to work the way that they work to then make a larger picture, to then go from that ad infinitum, whatever the word is, to what we perceive.
Okay, so this is really interesting. So now I see that there's the psyche, and then there's this kind of chaotic undercurrent outside of the psyche that the psyche is sort of trying to make sense of.
Yeah.
Like trying to order.
Yeah. I mean, in general, I do believe that humans need order in one kind or another.
Yeah.
That's why I always find it interesting when people talk about anarchy, for instance, or like, no order, no XYZ. But in that, there is order, right? There's like, okay, I need to find the like-minded people that also don't want that. Well, by doing that, you have found an order to it.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So in that case, man, this could go several directions. My brain is kind of overheating. So what's like is there a sort of source of these things? Like, I don't know. Like, why do humans exist at all? Like, is there just this dichotomy between life that's fighting entropy and like chaos that resembles something like pure entropy or something?
Yeah.
Like is there something above this dichotomy, or is it just this? Does it stop there?
So, I don't know. I've always thought of I always thought there was always the duality that we can live in. The one where we have to have some kind of entity there, whether it's whatever god or gods you believe in. That could be the thing that helps you give that structure. Or you could believe in and just accept the fact that we're born, and then what we do every day is what you do. It doesn't have to be good, it doesn't have to be bad, it doesn't have to have a purpose to it. But it just is. And accepting the is, I think, is a good way of life, as long as you realize that I can do a lot of things with is. I don't have to try to live in the thing where like, well, nothing matters because I'm going to die or the world's going to die at some point. Well, the things that you do in every day, like going to class or stopping for an interview, that can matter, and sometimes things that matter just to you is enough.
Oh my god!
And that's that's what can give you a purpose. Is just being enough.
And she's not going to be mad at me for being
Okay.
And I'm so
Yeah.
happy we get to this right now.
Okay, so is it that purpose that holds reality together because it holds the psyche together? Like, or does that purpose like hold the psyche together? Is that even a good formulation?
Yes, but I don't want it to be like, because when people say purpose, they have the more traditional idea of like, my life needs to have purpose. I need to do these things. Sometimes I think a better reality would be like, my purpose is to be myself, and what myself is constantly in flux. And accepting that part about it. It's like,
So it is the highest virtue, if you allow me the term, something like authenticity, just being authentic to the is of yourself and letting it play out in the way it does.
yeah, letting it play out, but then also being okay when you want to have the other parts of yourself be shown. Like, hey, I just started to listen to heavy metal. I don't know if this is going to be a part of my personality or not. I don't know if I want this to be a part of my life. But if I don't want to say pretend, that's not the right way to put it, but if I engage in that a little bit, maybe that could be. So allowing yourself to be like, what my authentic self is kind of two things. It's like who I am by myself, to myself, but also is the things that you might want to try and do, and then bring that into your overall picture of you.
Okay, so there's this self and there's a sort of discernment. You're looking always outside of yourself to the somewhat chaotic kind of structure that you're interacting with. And you're saying, is this authentic to me? Do I want to bring this into myself or integrate it into my psyche?
Yeah.
You're constantly asking that question. Yeah. Are you asking that question in relationship to a sort of ideal, or is it just your conception of who you are if something is true to yourself? Because we change all the time.
Yeah.
So if someone's always like just saying like how do we make that decision of who we are, especially when we're changing as a person?
No, that's fair. That's a good question.
Is there a sort of ideal that we have to act in relationship to, or?
Not necessarily. I think it comes down to a lot of internal conversations, and you can externalize them by actually like talking to yourself, and that works.
Okay.
But the idea is like you continuously ask yourself these different questions when you're bombarded or when you're confronted with different realities, different thoughts, different ideas, different all these kind of things. You can come to it and then have that conversation, and what you think might be a part of it can change over time. So that, I guess it's just constantly asking yourself those questions and seeing what, I don't want to say feels right, but what you determine works for you the best way.
Okay, so why isn't it that you're just letting it play out in an authentic way? If like why can't it be formulated like that based on what you're telling me? Or maybe you would accept that formulation. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because what I'm hearing is like you're taking this sense of authenticity and you're trusting in the process to some degree, and you're just trying to almost get into the flow state. Maybe that's a relevant term. You're trying to like find yourself. Like why isn't it that you're sort of just letting it play out as it will, like, sort of like a open-handed endeavor? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think it's a couple different things. I think because we accept, going back to the idea of like the reality that is outside of ourselves potentially, and that we have to interact with out in one way or another. I think we also get, and the need for order that we talked about, we get in the idea of there are constraints or there are societal things in XYZ that are always like in a push-pull with what we want or what we want to be perceived as, or if you don't have those conversations or if you don't think about those pieces at all, like we're having this conversation. A lot of people don't have these kind of thoughts about who I am and who I want to be. They think of like who I want to be a fan of this person, so I'm going to try and be this.
Okay.
But there could be also the idea of I just am because I don't know why I am, I just am. So
Okay.
I think it's outside factors that limit sometimes this authenticity coming through because you get a pushback.
Okay.
So, well, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Oh yeah, no. So there's constantly this relationship between societal constraints or even physical constraints and this kind of notion of who you want to be or your desires or something.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Okay. So can the human being it's kind of a weird way to say it, but can the human being be considered a desiring thing? Like that's at root what
Yeah.
we desire something and that we try to manipulate our constraints to the best of our ability in order to fulfill those desires? Like is that the best formulation of it, or could you think of a better?
No, I think that works. I think desires might be. That's a pretty good word. I think that's what it is. I think we have a pull toward certain things that we want, and we try to make that a reality. We test those different pieces out to see if that works for you. See if you can be accepted within the communities that those things exist in too.
Okay. So is the ultimate goal of any person to try to, I don't know, leverage enough power in order to make the most of their desires manifest?
I think it's more of finding acceptance.
Okay.
And that can come in a bunch of different forms, right?
So maybe there's an unconscious desire for all people of being accepted?
I think so, yeah. I think that's generally what it comes down to. And like we were saying, we're thinking about the individual person, right?
Yeah.
And I was saying you ask these questions to yourself, however many questions, however in depth you want to get. But those questions ultimately are you're accepting yourself for being that is, right? For being whatever that form ends up being, or what you want that form being, or that flux that's always there. You kind of accept that. Be like, hey, I don't have to be a part of this hegemonic norm of these different communities or this different society, but I can still be within those things and still find acceptance. Like I am brand new to CSU, for instance. Just say I'm brand new to here. I want to be a part of this community. I want to be accepted, but I also have to accept that I can be accepted. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. Like the first step is accepting that there's the possibility of acceptance before you can consider acceptance per se.
I think so. Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Then is the ideal for all people to be like, because where does it end exactly? Like, because maybe they could be accepted by one person, but then those two people aren't accepted by anyone else.
Yeah.
Is that an okay situation, or like what is there a certain threshold of people that it's good to be accepted by or something?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Again, I think it comes down to as long as you accept yourself, that's where things can branch from.
Okay, that's kind of what you're getting at before.
Yeah.
Okay, so accepting yourself is the same as accepting the possibility that you can be accepted?
Yeah, yep.
Okay.
I think so, yeah.
And so after you do that, are you just kind of good? Like that's kind of the the biggest puzzle piece of reality. Then you're like, man, I'm set.
Honestly, probably, because if we think about that as like the base layer of your house, right? That's
Okay.
the base layer. That's the concrete. That's everything else is formed. As long as you have that, you can always change how your house looks. You can change where the location of this house is. You can
Okay.
change all these different things to like look on the outside perspective what you want it to be. You can put up the pictures that you want people to see, or the pictures you don't want people to
Okay.
see as much. You can change everything to it as long as you have that base acceptance of yourself. Then from there, you can be like, it's not necessarily just like I'm good, but it's more of like I'm good with me, and now the rest of everything else. I don't want to say it doesn't matter because it's not meaningless. It's you give meaning to it, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, because like at the end of the day, if I wanted to, I could just do literally nothing. I know that to live, I have to eat and I have to drink. I have to have those two physical things, and even that can be spread out as long as I have water every other day and food every 3 or 4 days at the base minimum.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to go to classes. I don't have to teach. I don't have to accept or trying to buy a house, trying to own pets, all this kind of stuff. I don't have to do any of that. But the things that I accept is just me being me, and now I want to do those things. Those are, going back to that, the idea of the desires. I want to be in charge of an animal and have that love and have that acceptance from that animal. I want to learn more about the world, so I'm going to this place, this school and everything. So it's
Yeah.
all the different desires that you can put on top of. At least if I accept myself, just me being me, then
Yeah.
these other things can always change.
Okay. So just to push this sort of idea,
Yeah.
what if someone says, I accept my desire to murder 600 people?
Yeah.
Like-
Yeah.
like
No,
like-
no.
like,
That's completely
should
right.
you say like, hey, maybe you shouldn't desire that, sir, or like, how would you go about?
Two things I would. One, if that's your reality and that's what you need to do, then that's what you need to do. But I'm not going to say necessarily that's a good thing.
Okay.
So just because I want you to accept the reality of what you want doesn't
Okay.
mean that I agree with it, and it doesn't mean that I think you should do it.
Okay.
So-
but where do we find that that ought? You know what I mean? Like, because what can you use to try to like question that person's desires? Be like, hey, I don't think those
Yeah.
are good.
Yeah, that comes down to the philosophy of things, right? Like
Yeah.
the moral philosophy of what is right and what is wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe having a base morality around humans
Yeah.
is generally a good thing to at least have a guideline of.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be like you need to be this person, but hey, generally, don't kill other people.
So
Accept them as you've
Okay.
accepted yourself as well.
So what I'm hearing is there might not be a singular ideal in which
Yeah.
all things should point, but
Yeah.
there's like a vague ideal.
Yeah, I think there's a vague, and I think that's how just generally society and humanity has been able to progress, right? Because if we go back and we think about our ancestors, cavemen, even before that, Neanderthals and everything, they must have had a base morality of, hey, we birthed this thing, and hey, don't kill that thing.
Yeah. Do you think that's more instinctual than conscious? At that point?
I think the instinctual became conscious.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
so
what
say
about
it-
the
it-
instinct of killing 600 people? Though? If someone was born
Yeah.
with that instinct. you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, how do we
Yeah.
differentiate between instincts?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how we differentiate between those instincts.
Nice to meet you.
But what we do is that outside perspective of
Okay.
we have a societal, again, might be those constraints or restrictions, but societal constraints, restrictions of, hey, you might have those desires and you might have that instinct to do that, but the rest of us agree more or less that you shouldn't do that. So we're going to create this community that says don't do that thing.
Yeah.
So they could be like, hey, and if you think about nowadays when it comes to people in prisons, say serial killers and things along those lines, a lot of the times nowadays, we have them in jail and we have them in prison and we have them in death row, but we have a lot of people that are there to talk them through that and to have them I don't want to say have them understand their base desires, but like to try to rehab them one way or another.
Okay. So there's this sort of vague ideal that society should have as a sort of basis in order to maybe be habitable at all.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. Does it sound like a good ending spot?
I think so. I mean,
All right. Cool.
yeah.
I'm running out of questions. To
That's
kind of
totally
guide
cool.
from that.
Yeah, I guess I have a question. Like, did you just want to have an open conversation like this,
Or
which
did I
I'm
have
more
an
than happy
agenda?
to, or is there something you're trying to lead toward, like a message you're trying to get across, or is it just talk?
Oh, like if I'm a Christian evangelist?
No, but yes, right. I don't. It's not necessarily that, but like,
Yeah.
is there a message of some kind that you wanted to get to?
I would say I just want to see if see if I can open up maybe some kind of disjunction in people's sort of worldview.
Yeah.
See if there's unanswered questions that they should be wrestling with before they've kind of become complacent.
No, I think that's a great place to start from. I think those are good questions to ask and have people ask those of themselves, right?
Yeah.
Just because I personally believe that, like, I have that base and I've more or less accepted my foundation, and
Yeah.
then I choose to do these things that I was talking about,